experiences, while traumatic, are your experiences. They are part of your life journey, and they were all a part of the greater picture, the plan that your life, you know, is going to roll out as you go. So it's really important to note that. Hey guys, what's up? It's Paige and welcome back to my channel. We are talking about understanding emotional triggers in your relationships. So I know everybody and their brother probably has experienced some sort of trigger before in their life, but as somebody who has worked a lot with healing, notice that triggers come in a lot of different ways and they have a purpose a lot deeper than what I think we give them. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I make all sorts of videos to help you discover and embody your power. So if that's something you're interested in, of course, subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up so I know you want to see more content like so. First, what is a trigger? So by definition, a trigger in mental health is anything that invokes some sort of uncomfortable emotional response. So this can be a plethora of different things. Any kind of sensory stimulation can hold a trigger for another person. So a certain smell, maybe a way that somebody touches you or the way that they talk to you, the tone, something like that. The way that someone responds to a trigger is just as subjective as what a trigger could be. So people can start crying, people can have really heightened perception of things, get hypersensitivity, like being really sensitive to noises. Me personally, I know that my spectrum of reactions when it comes to my triggers can be anywhere from just irritation and needing to take deep breaths to full on crying in a very dark place and just kind of having a panic attack. I mean, the range and the spectrum of how you can experience a trigger really does vary upon the person. It's important to note that a lot of the time these triggers come from a place of trauma. Now we understand that trauma is just an experience that you had that you weren't able to cope with or consciously really understand or grasp at that point in the time that you experienced said trauma or said event. So it's important to note that what may be trauma for you may not be trauma for another person. Essentially, when the person gets triggered, they're being mentally, emotionally, physically sent back to that point in time when they experienced that trauma. Which leads me to the overall idea behind this video, which is what purpose does this serve? Why must we experience and re-experience these harsh emotions that, you know, shaped us in a seemingly negative way? So triggers actually, I have found, relate a lot to spiritual awakening and the healing process, self-healing in general. In my own experience, I can say that when I hit my lowest of low and I got the most triggered and was at the point where I just didn't know how to deal with these triggers and they happen so often, I realized that that was the point in my life where my spiritual awakening started. Who came to say hi in the middle of the video? I'm trying to focus, but through my actual spiritual awakening process, I was able to recognize the fact that these triggers were showing me unhealed parts of myself. They were showing me areas that I had pretty much repressed, suppressed, whatever you want to call it, just put it way back way in my brain and just didn't want to deal with it. And it was just basically a part of myself that I rejected. If you've seen other videos on my channel, you know that there is sort of a split within each of us, which is the self and then the opposite side of self, which would be other, or in other cases, the shadow self. Now, if you want to know more about the shadow self, I have a video which I will link wherever above or below or both, as above, so below. But I just think that it is important to note that while we see ourselves as the ego, the person that we have understood ourselves to be, just find that as we discover who we are and the versions of self that we accept, the idea of self that we identify with, the more we label things into other categories or reject them. And a lot of the time, emotional experiences or any experiences really also get put in those two different categories. But that's the biggest thing that you learn, I feel like, within spirituality or just connecting, you know, mind, body, and spirit, understanding the fact that you can't just keep these things unhealed without any repercussion, because you're not meant to be just a little part of everything. That's something that I think is kind of abstract to think about, but a beautiful way to kind of visualize it is a birth chart. In a natal chart, which I'll show mine right here, you see that there are 12 different houses. Now these 12 different houses have 12 different personalities, basically are just little groups, niches of certain energies that kind of correlate together. So knowing that, you know, there's 12 zodiac signs, it's also important to note that all 12 of those zodiac signs are in your chart, regardless of how intensely they're portrayed within in your life. So it's very important to note that, yes, while you may, identify as being a kind-hearted person, a victim that doesn't care, or basically just saying, however you identify, however you label yourself as, there's a part that you're rejecting that is still part of that spectrum, that is still part of you regardless. And that's where these emotional triggers come in. These experiences, while traumatic, are your experiences. They are part of your life journey, and they were all a part of the greater picture, the plan that your life is going to roll out as you go. So it's really important to note that while we may reject certain parts of ourselves, and while we may reject certain experiences that we've had, that doesn't mean that they don't serve their purpose. Ironically enough, think about what happens when people experience trauma. A lot of people start to experience dissociation, which is basically, like I said, you're rejecting the experience, you're rejecting whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, and you're kind of spacing yourself out from it. Now, that is a coping skill that is caused from trauma, but in a way, the opposite is how you would heal trauma, because you're experiencing the dis-ease, so you need to bring in more ease. And how would you bring in more ease? Healing. That's essentially what the earth is trying to do for you, and the universe in general. When these experiences happen to you that cause suffering, cause pain, and cause just any sort of emotional reaction that is uncomfortable for you, the universe is just trying to reassociate you with this power that you don't really understand. You didn't know how to understand it, and that's completely okay that you didn't understand it at this time, but it's gonna keep coming up for you until you deal with it, until you heal that part of you, because like I said, you're meant to be whole. You're meant to be all parts of the picture, not just the ones that you accept. And I think that is the hardest part about getting into the mindset of healing, is understanding that you have all of these qualities, the good, bad, the ugly, the beautiful. It doesn't matter. They're all a part of you, and they all fuel you, and they all come together to create your unique power. So, discrediting them just because they are associated with a negative event doesn't mean that that's the end. As you may know, if you are somebody who has triggers, you know that it's easy to feel debilitated when you experience triggers. Like I said, sometimes I just get into a complete disaster, like panic attack central. I'm crying uncontrollably. I'm shaking like a little girl, and I can't hold myself back from doing that, but I'm not supposed to. And that's the thing, is repressing those feelings and those emotions and those responses is what got you to that place of like unhealed trauma. You didn't deal with it. You didn't know how to deal with it. So like I said, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to deal with it when it comes up. Like I said, the opposite of self is other. So other people play that role within relationships. Nobody really means to trigger you or means to be this evil light in your life. They're just playing out, what they're playing out. Maybe your guys' traumas kind of mesh with each other and makes it so you guys both get triggered in a way so you both can heal. Karmic relationships have their purpose, and I think every relationship in a way holds some kind of purpose for you to reconnect with your purpose. So it all kind of comes back together, but I just find that this is something that changed my life when I started to look at these scary, suffering, horrible moments as literal doorways to opportunity, to healing, to my happiness, to a fuller version of myself. Because when you are traumatized and you are coming from a place of being triggered and being like emotionally hurt, you're not feeling full. There's an emptiness that just echoes, and it wants you to notice so you can take care of it. And we don't always interpret it that way. Like by default, we just take these triggers as a sign that, the external environment needs to change. But in reality, it's the way that you internally handle it that's actually going to make things change. So yeah, I felt really happy to share this message with you guys. It's one of those things that, we talk about, but do we talk about it in enough depth that we really can find power in it? A lot of things I find in this world that honestly I've made my YouTube channel about is that, we've talked about them, we have an understanding, but we're still giving away our power because we aren't going full circle with the journey, and that's just so important to do. So I hope this video helped you guys. If it did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more, comment down below your thoughts, and of course hang out with me on my other apps, because I love to hang out with you guys and just talk to you, pick our brains about all this weird shit that is life. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in a later video. Bye for now.